depression is not a real thing, right? But after my last suicide attempt, I had convinced myself, at least the depression had convinced me, that it would be better if I'm not here. I think it's important to have a content warning here as well, because we'll go into a lot of...
Hi, I'm Martin Peters. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Samapan, and today we're going to be undertaking a podcast with Arjun Gupta. We're going to be talking about a whole range of topics, including men's mental health, his own personal journey, ethics, and a few other quirky questions. I hope you enjoy what we've got in store for you. You know, some of the topics here that we're going to talk about could be triggering for people, so please be aware that we may be talking about trauma, suicide, self-harm, and other sort of potentially triggering conversations.
I think we're getting into the real stuff now.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, Arjun, to the people, a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. I'm Arjun Gupta. You might know me better as the Knight of Steel on Instagram. I'm a psychologist and a content creator. I love teaching research and stats, and I work on men's mental health, and I'm really glad to be here, Martin.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure for you to be here on a very, very wet day here in Mumbai. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I know you've got a lot of experience in your own field, but you've also got a lot of own personal experience in mental health, which I think is great, and I really look forward to that. And I was thinking, really, you know, one of the questions I'd love to ask would be, if you was going to say something to a 20-year-old male growing up at this point, maybe a little bit of advice or a little bit of a suggestion, what would you say to someone, a 20-year-old male?
I think the most important thing to remember is that things can get better. I think at 20 years old, we sometimes get very nihilistic, get very pessimistic about life, and things can get better if you work hard enough on them. And I think that's one of the most important things you can remember, that it's not all doom and gloom for the future. There is hope, there is possibilities for a better life in the future, and you have to remain open to them.
It's a very difficult age for people, isn't it? That 20-year-old sort of thing. What do you think are the biggest challenges, particularly in today's day and age?
Well, I can say loneliness seems to be quite common among young adults these days, at least 20 years old, where they're struggling to find a place for themselves, isn't it? They're struggling to find people they relate with, they can connect with, especially in physical life. There's a lot of digital connections people have these days, but that connection in personal physical life is not as deep as you'd like it to be. So that brings with itself a lot of loneliness, a lot of feeling of being lost.
Yes.
And that's a huge challenge that 20-year-olds are facing today.
That's a really interesting point about people not necessarily knowing who their neighbour is. Yeah. And because one of my observations of being in India for a long period of time is that although there's lots of people, and particularly here in South Bombay, where we are today, that, you know, most people do seem to sort of there is a bit more sort of connectivity, whereas in the Western world it's even more pronounced. So that's really interesting that you're picking that up, and I'm actually sort of thinking, actually it's a little bit better than what it's like in the West. So.
Yeah, I think it's down to where we've grown up, both of us. I think there is individualism that you expect in the West, and like I'll give you my example of moving from Haryana to Gurgaon, right, which is an urban city, very metro-like. And it's very alienating. It can be very alienating, those urban cities, metro cities, for people who are moving in from smaller towns, because there's not that much connectivity, there's not that much connections that you have, and it's difficult to build them all over once again. So I think both the things exist together.
I think you've been a big advocate of mental health and people being breaking stigma and getting people to talk a little bit more openly about this. For you, how did mental health start to sort of impact you? When did you sort of start becoming aware that maybe things were not quite right, if that's a polite way of putting it?
So I think it started around 10 years ago. I was 17 at the time, and it sneaked up on me, I'll be honest. I think I did not realize that there was something that was going wrong. When it was, there was a lot of pessimism, a lot of cynicism about life and career and everything in general. And I ignored it for a very long time that this is just who I am, this is just what I am. Maybe I had been hiding this side of myself for a long time, but because I did not identify that this is not going well, that this is my mind playing tricks with itself, I think that's what eventually led to the situation becoming what it did, where within a span of 2 months, I found myself clinically depressed. I was on medications. I was just completely limited to my own home. I couldn't even go outside. So yeah, that's how it starts usually, out of nowhere.
At that point, I'm going to ask this question as well because it's talked about a lot. What was the challenging part, or was it not challenging to actually find help? Because I mean, there are quite a lot of professionals around, but a lot of people do struggle. Did you struggle to sort of initially sort of reach out? What was it that What was it that sort of may have sort of prolonged that suffering?
I'll be honest, I was very lucky to have parents who were very open to the idea of visiting a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And they were the ones who said, Arjun, you're not who you used to be. This is not who you really are.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to a psychiatrist? And I was like, okay, let's try this out. And it was actually some holding back from my own end that I was not going to talk to a psychiatrist, which was prolonging the suffering, as we talked about. So it was, help was available. I was seeking help, technically speaking. My
Yes.
parents were there for me. But because I was not really cooperating with the professionals, I was not telling them about what was happening, it made things a lot harder than they needed to be.
Well, okay, I mean that's a really interesting point about when you say it sort of took longer because I wasn't sort of telling them about it. What was that? What was the difficult part? Because turning up to a therapy session is probably quite easy to do once you sort of get to the room, but then all of a sudden you're stuck with someone that you don't necessarily know,
Yeah.
and you've got to start talking about
Everything.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I'll be honest. I think I didn't understand how psychiatry worked at the beginning. I went there. I think I went there with my mom the first time. My
Yes.
mom told the doctor everything, that he's not been himself. He's been very quiet, very agitated, very angry, and we know he needs some help, but he's not talking to us. So we thought we should bring him to you. And that's when the psychiatrist asked my mom to step outside so that we could have some private conversations. And I did not understand that. I was like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Why do you need to talk to me personally? I mean, my mom has told you what's wrong. Now just give me something that will fix me, right? It's the formulation that we have for something like a fever. You have a fever, you tell the doctor you have a fever, you take some medications for it, and then you get better. And it was very new for me when the doctor said, okay, tell me about what's been going on in your life. What have you been feeling? Did you get in fight with your friends? Did you have a breakup? I did not. So I was just not willing to talk because it felt like cheating, right?
Yeah.
Like I tell the doctor what's wrong, and then he tells me that, okay, this is what you do to fix this. So it was a lot of, I would call it self-stigma about seeking help for psychiatry, for mental health. But that was what kept me back.
Do you think there's a lot of stuff around about what people sort of misunderstand what actually therapy or visiting a psychiatrist entails? I think you sort of said, I got there and I expected to be, him just to fix me.
Fix me, yeah.
Which is, as an experience of going to a GP,
Yeah.
they'll give you some tablets, send you away, and I'm
Yeah.
fixed. Do you think this is a big issue here in India? Because it's something that I've recognised that a lot of people are expecting an immediate fix, or they want an immediate diagnosis. That if I haven't got a diagnosis, then that's a big problem. How do you sort of see that?
I think the biggest issue is, first of all, people are not willing to go to a mental health professional because we still are afraid of what these things might do, what they are, how they work.
Yeah.
So there is still a lot of fear, apprehension attached to these medications, therapy, all this stuff. But people who do show up to a psychiatrist, to a therapist, they have some very unrealistic expectations of what these things can do. you go to a therapist for the first time and you expect them to just give you some divine knowledge that'll just fix everything in your life, that you can just change your life in a moment.
Yeah.
Which it does not work that way.
I wish it did, by the way.
It would be great if it did. It would be great if it did. Life would be much simpler.
Yeah, I guess, one of the things that about it would be that whereas in sort of general medicine, the doctor's doing most of the work,
Yeah.
whereas when we talk about mental health, the therapist
Yeah.
or the psychiatrist is
Helping out.
is helping you do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is very difficult to accept, first of all, that if I am going to do the work, what are you here for?
Why am I paying you?
Exactly.
Yeah. Why am I paying you?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Like, if
yeah.
you want me to do everything, then I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
But it's not that easy. It's always, I think, that's something I was experiencing as well, because the doctors, the therapists kept telling me that you have to tell us, you have to help us help you.
Yes.
And the only thing I was telling myself, the rebellious teenager that I was being, no, I will not tell you anything.
Yeah.
Fix me if you can. It was like a challenge I was throwing them. And the only person who was suffering because of that was myself and my family.
What changed? Can you recall a moment, a time where things started to change, where you thought, okay, I might need to do something a little bit different with a therapist or something? Can you remember a sort of stage in that process for you?
I think my experience of even accepting that something like clinical depression can happen to me was a very long journey of 18 months, wherein I was being told by the therapists, by the doctors, that look, you have a mild illness and we can fix this, but we need your help. And I was just not willing to help them or myself, right? So I just kept digging myself deeper and deeper into the hole. I kept making things worse for myself. And there was this moment when I think it was one of my parents who got tired a bit. They were a bit tired of being there, right? And it's pretty human. It's pretty human.
Sure.
You get tired after a while.
Yeah.
And I think in that moment of humanity, I felt bad for the first time, right? So clinical depression, you feel numb, but in that moment, I felt bad. I felt bad about not feeling anything. So I think that was a moment which made me realize that, okay, something might be wrong, because I know this is not who I am. When my parents are feeling bad about something, I also feel bad. But in that moment, I think it was around 2016 or 2017, I did not feel anything. And that was a pretty big moment for me. That why am I not feeling anything? So that's when I started thinking about cooperating, started thinking about talking to the therapists, talking to doctors. Did not do it for a few more months, but I started thinking about it.
You was in contemplation.
Yes, very long-term contemplation. And I think the moment that did change everything for me was after my last suicide attempt. This was 13th February 2017. It was a terrible attempt, Martin.
Okay.
It was a horrible attempt at dying.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just bad at dying. You can't do it. And that's what I told myself. That's what I thought to myself. Look, I am clearly not good at this stuff. So maybe I should try something else. And I went to my parents that night. They didn't even know what had happened. And I told them, guys, I want to write a Facebook post about what I'm going through, and I want to ask everybody for help, because I was a bit desperate at that time. Medications were not working. Therapy, I was not really cooperating. I went under electroconvulsive therapy. Did not seem to have an effect at the time. So I wrote this long Facebook post asking for help from people. And I think the response that people had, strangers, people from my school, seniors, juniors, teachers, the response that the community had to that was what made me realize that I can get better and I should want to get better. And with this support, I definitely can.
And was at that point of sort of knowing that there is some understanding out there that people...
Yeah. People were trying their best to help.
Yeah.
And I think I saw the good in them. So there was somebody saying that we'll take you to some astrologer and he'll fix you, right? And I think 6 months before that would have infuriated me. Like, how will that fix me?
Yeah.
You're just kidding yourself. But in that moment, I started hearing that we will do everything we can to help you, even if that means taking you to an astrologer. Like, the intentions seem good.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's something that really changed. That I started looking at the intentions behind what people were saying. Uh, they were trying their best to be helpful, which was what meant a lot to me.
Feeling that people actually care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The community cares about you. Your
Yeah.
people who you think don't know you or don't care about you anymore, they're still there for you. You might not see them, you might not know them, but they're still there and they're looking out for you. And that's a beautiful feeling to have.
I mean, you mentioned about your part around about your depression and how you felt numb for a long period of time, but also that it was at the, and if you don't mind me asking, you sort of mentioned around about a suicide attempt, and candidly said I wasn't very good at doing them, but can you talk a little bit about what it was like to be, you know, at that phase where that seemed like an option, and you know, because it's, you know, it's the final option in some in a way, you know, can you talk a little bit about that? And I'm assuming from what you said, there was a few, it was not just once, there was a few times. So would you like to, because it's such a big, we know in India that it's one of the, you know, it's got the highest suicide rate in the world. From
one of the highest,
one of the highest, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you know, it's a topic that does need to be talked about, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, of course. I think it's a question that I get very often, that what goes on in the mind of a person who is thinking about something like this, right?
Yes.
Like, because for normal folks, it's unthinkable to even have an idea like this of ending your life. And what seemed very, I'll be honest, it seemed like the logical choice at the time, where I was just looking at the kind of life I was leading, the kind of life my family had been going through, because they were having to go to different cities to get my treatment. They had to stay with me. They had to take time off work just to ensure that I was physically safe. I had convinced myself, at least the depression had convinced me, that it would be better if I'm not here. It would be better if I stopped existing. And that is the logical choice, which is not the logical choice. I will be honest, it is not the logical choice. Your parents most probably love you and your family loves you and they do not want to lose you. They will do everything they can. But at the time, it did not make any sense. That the emotional part of, being loved by a family, being cared for by a family did not make sense. All that I knew was my family is suffering because of me. I am suffering because of me. It's better if I'm not here. So that's what goes on in the mind, where it seems like the logical choice. And in hindsight, looking back, it was not the logical choice. I am really, really glad I am still here. I'm really glad I failed at all those attempts. And I'm, out of all the skills I could have had, I'm really glad I'm bad at dying.
Bad at dying. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you was bad at that, and I mean, if you was going to say something to someone at the moment that may be watching this, may be listening to this, what would you do? What could you do if you're there suffering in silence at the moment? What would you recommend? You've got the experience.
Don't believe everything you think. That is the most important thing. Your mind will lie to you. Your mind is not your friend at all times. And this is something we know in psychology through cognitive biases, heuristics, but it's genuinely one of the most important things you can know. Your mind is not always on your side. You must not believe everything that you're thinking. It's one thing to know it, it's another to believe it, but just knowing it might be enough at times.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the whole part about the mind playing tricks and sort of the distorted view that one has, and you had that. At what point did you start to feel the therapy starting to work, or what was it that started working? I know you talked about it was when I started talking, but what sort of started happening, or when did you start to realize, oh, this is a little bit of a change?
I started crying.
Okay.
So before that, I think for around 18 months when all of this was going on, I wanted to cry. There were many moments where I
Yeah.
felt like crying, like I was completely emotionally welled up, but I could not cry. It simply was not happening. And slowly, as time went on, I think once I started cooperating with my doctors, with my therapists, and actually started telling them what's happening, there would be moments where I'd just cry, maybe for 2 minutes, maybe for just a minute. But I'd be like, yeah, this did not happen earlier. This is new. And this is good, right? Because at least it's coming out, it's not getting stored inside. So I think crying was a great moment for me.
Do you want to talk a little bit? Just could you just give a bit of an overview of a couple of those things? I think you mentioned medication,
Yeah.
therapy, and also ECT.
Yeah.
So, do you want to just give a bit of an overview of that so people can understand what that sort of
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here are the three kind of medications you can have.
three times? Okay, yeah. Let's start with that.
Three types of treatment you can seek.
Yeah.
So first, we started with medications,
Yeah.
antidepressants. But I talked to one of my psychology friends at the time. I was pursuing MBBS, and I had one friend who was studying psychology, and I talked to her about they're putting me on antidepressants. So what do you think? And she just told me to never take an antidepressant.
Okay.
She said, "Don't ever take an antidepressant. They will make you very lazy. You'll just be sleeping the whole day, and you'll just gain a lot of weight, and you'll just completely change as a person." And that scared me. That absolutely scared me. Another confession: I did not take medications for a long time.
Right. Okay.
Because of that.
Because of that.
Because
yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
I just did not cooperate even with the medications, and that is a bad idea. That is a very bad idea, because then your psychiatrist is thinking that you are taking medications, but you're not taking medications. So they'll put you on heavier medications, which you'll also not take, and it becomes a cycle. Don't do that. So the medications, I think, started helping when I actually started talking to
Yes.
the psychiatrist, telling them what was going on, started giving them feedback that this is what I felt when I took this medication, this is what I felt immediately after it, a day after it, all that stuff. Therapy, I will be honest, it did not fit well with me. I think I struggled to find a good therapist who I could relate well with.
Yeah.
So I went through some psychodynamic reports. I think we had that Rorschach test. I aced that test, full marks. And then ECT was quite an experience. Electroconvulsive therapy. It's not how they show it in the movies. You're not just seizing on a table. I was surprised by that. They give you anesthesia, and it's all very professional. And I think the only thing I carry from it is just I had an amnesia for a day or two right after it, but no major side effects from it either. So I think a lot of my decision making at the time was coming from a lot of lies about psychiatric care, about ECT, about medications, about therapy. And again, all of that contributed to making things worse.
It prolonged the process.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about the medication, and often, some of the stuff that you said, we know is not necessarily true about medication. And when you talk about ECT, I've been on the other side of working in an ECT suite, so I've seen it administered. I haven't had it, but I've also been on antidepressants in the past, and they work well for me. So
and that's the thing. If it works for you, then that's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
If it's helping you be your truest self, that's all we want to do.
Yeah. What do you sort of see as some of the big barriers for men, and particularly around recognizing mental health?
I think the biggest barriers come in self-reflection, wherein when we're going through those emotional changes, we don't really recognize them, which I did not. I think I did not recognize those emotional changes either. I was feeling them, but I did not do anything about them because I thought this is just what an emotion is. An emotion comes and goes. You don't need to do much about it. What ultimately gets us to take psychiatric care or any mental health care is behavioral changes. When we're not working as well as we used to, we're not sleeping as much as we used to, we're not going out as much as we used to. Um, and by then, it might be a bit further along than it would have been if we had stopped it sooner, if we had recognized that there is some change that's happening sooner. And there is that belief that you have to take care of yourself, right? You have to take care of yourself. You have to be reliant. A good man must be self-reliant. They must provide for others instead of, um, being lost within themselves. Those things play a role. Those things can be barriers because masculinity, thinking that we're good men, is very important to our mental health.
Yeah.
And those ideas of help seeking go against that at times. So those end up being very strong barriers. We think that we'd be weaker men or bad men if we did these things, but that's not true. It's not the case. We all need help. Even in the gym, you need a spotter sometimes, right? Just to look at you, just to ensure that you don't hurt yourself. When you combine a lot of economic pressures, a lot of social factors, and some biological factors to the mix, it becomes very difficult to reach out to people when you need it, and to then keep reaching out until you find the right person. Because let's take my case. I have found it difficult to find a therapist for myself, even today. Even as a psychologist myself, even as a therapist myself, it is a bit difficult to find a good fit with a therapist, right? A lot of guys stop seeking help after. Like, if it's not a good fit, why go after so many people over and over and over again? Right? It takes some dedication and some motivation to keep going to different therapists all the time. Mix that with the fact that I personally think that men's mental health is very, very under researched. We don't have a lot of great quality knowledge in how men experience and express these things, what works best for them. So we are lacking behind. We are leaving men behind in what can be done for them and what can be expected from them in improving their lives. So we need to fix that from both the ends. I think we need to help men seek help as well, and we need to improve better quality and more gender sensitive help for them as well. It goes both ways.
I mean, it leads me on to another question that's slightly off tack, but when you talk about psychology, and I think this is for psychologists that are watching, is why is it so unstable, and what can change? Because I've got my opinions on this, which you may have seen around with regards to this. But what do you think needs to change to make it more of a stable and more enticing, enticing profession, but also on the other side for people to respect that, that therapy really doesn't come at 200 rupees for an hour?
Look, I always think that regulation would be great for this profession. I think we are severely under-regulated, and there are loads of people who are taking advantage of that. Yeah. There are loads of quacks in the field. There are loads of folks who charge super high fees but do not have the experience or the degrees or the training or anything to offer. They just have a brand to offer, right? So I personally think that if we regulate the field well enough, if the government decides to step in and take mental health of people seriously, then I think this can happen.
Yeah.
It can become a very stable and very respectable job. It is one of them. But I think we're being let down by our regulating authorities right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. I genuinely believe in having some form of legislation that's enforceable as well. I mean, it's all very well having it written down, but it's got to be able to be enforced. But I think I think there is different ways of doing it, whether it's through organisational having to register and be inspected by inspection bodies. That might be one way that they could do it. That's what we use in the UK. There's a Care Standards Commission, and that's what they do in the UK. The US is a little bit different because it's very much different depending on the state that you're in. So often then they have what they call the accreditation bodies where people self-submit to the accreditation body and have to show certain standards, and we've done that here.
I remember I made a post about the National Suicide Prevention Policy around, I think it was released in 2022, and I was delighted with it. And it was you who commented that it's great to have a policy, but we need to implement it as well. And I thought, well, yeah, obviously we'll implement it. Look at us now.
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, and I've often seen this, is that there's some well-intentioned legislation comes out, or there's policy statements that come out.
I think it comes down to how we enforce and how we, act on it continuously. It's not just that one big policy is made and then everything changes forever and ever. You have to work with that policy all the day, all the time, every year, every day, every week. You have to implement that policy. You can't let it out.
Yeah, and the standards evolve and change.
Yeah.
They're not something that should just remain in situ,
exactly.
And we're still implementing what we had, say, for example, in 2005. Yeah. And we're still doing the same thing in 2005. We're still doing it into 2025. It should be living.
It should be a living document.
Yeah.
It has to evolve with times.
What do you think? I mean, you're a mental health professional, but you're also an advocate. So, what do you see as the role of advocacy now in mental health, and how that can move policy?
Can it?
Well,
I'd like to think it can.
Well,
I'd like to think that it can, but I think it comes down to how you use the voice of influence that you have. What you use it for, how do you use it, who do you use it on?
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that most of the advocates, the most prominent ones at least, maybe who have followers in the millions, they're not really worried about policies. They're not really worried about the big picture of things. They are happy to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because they have the influence, they have the power to actually lobby some political groups, maybe do anything that they can to drive public policy. But I think we are still lacking behind in that, bringing about the change that we want to see. We are happy to have our own thing and just focusing on ourselves instead of trying to make things better for everybody.
What point in your journey did sharing your story feel like less like a risk and more like a responsibility?
I think I told you about that Facebook post, right? 14th Feb, just the day after my last attempt. 2 weeks after that post, I started getting messages from people that we showed your post to my parents. I showed your post to my parents and told them that I also have the same thing. I also feel the same things. And that's when they finally accepted that, okay, we'll go to a psychiatrist. Okay, we'll take you to some professional. Okay, we'll do this. And that was unthinkable for me. I did not know that it would have that kind of an impact within my own city, that people would identify with it, they'd use it as an example for others, and then become better themselves, take steps to become better themselves. And that made me feel like, okay, this is not just help seeking for myself. This is a responsibility that I have, that others also can get better if I share my story enough number of times with enough responsibility. So I think since then I've been really careful about how I share my story as well. I don't want to go into too many details, which should not be out there. But it's important to not keep it a secret as well, right? We can't just keep it to ourselves or just try to bury it somewhere. It's who I am. It's what I went through. And I'm not proud of it. I'm not ashamed of it. It just is. It is what it is.
It's my story.
It's my story.
Yeah.
And I like the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. When you sort of create content on mental health, what's the sort of the first question you ask yourself before you publish it?
I think the most important thing is, what emotion will this evoke in the people who see it? I don't want to do something that evokes anger or rage or sadness or helplessness.
Yeah.
I want them to either feel curious, to feel hope, to feel positive, to feel happiness, joy. Those things are very hard to find, especially on the internet.
Yeah.
And whenever I create some content, I want it to be something that adds to the person's life instead of something that takes something away from them, takes their peace away, takes their calmness away, makes them anxious. Um, I don't want to do that to the people who see my story or follow my content. So it's all about evoking something positive, adding something to their life, whether it's information, whether it's knowledge, whether it's education. Just make sure that people take something away from it. That's the most important thing for me. And even better if it's something positive.
What sort of responsibility do you think that content creators should have? When they are creating content that is centered around mental health, because we see, Instagram now is full of stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you sort of think about the responsibilities that people should have when they are creating stuff?
I think people should be held accountable for what they put out.
Yeah.
Whatever, especially for any health information, people should be accountable for what they're saying. Okay, the government doesn't want that. People don't want that, but you have to be accurate, because there are people out there who are taking your word as the gospel truth. It's just the truth, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And whether you intend for people to do that or not, they are going to do it. I put up a story yesterday where I just put my location as Buenos Aires the moment I landed in Mumbai. And three people believed that I'm actually in Buenos Aires. Even though I put up a story of Marine Drive and said, oh, I'm in the Marine Drive, and it's, wow, it's looking so much like Mumbai. And I put the location as Buenos Aires. Oh, wow, you're in Argentina? You're at a vacation? So that's when you have to have that responsibility to be accurate. Like, people will believe you. People will believe you. This was a joke. Like, it's a very light-hearted joke. There's no major consequences for this, right?
Yes.
Like, people won't do anything terrible to themselves or to others if they think I'm in Buenos Aires. But if I tell them something that's simply not true about mental health,
which we see quite often.
Which we see very, very often.
Yeah.
And we see it done with a lot of confidence, with a lot of cool editing, with a lot of great graphics.
Yeah.
People will believe that, and it will bring harm to them. You might not see it, you might not know it, but you will be responsible for it.
Well, looking at content now on things like, I'm going to use Insta because that seems to be sort of the main place now these days. What are some of the things that people should be looking out for that might be of concern? What are some of the things that you've seen that are untruths? A little bit like you sort of posting being in Buenos Aires. What are some of the stuff that is out there that sometimes people end up sort of believing in it?
I was just watching a reel yesterday that kissing can lead to depression.
Oh, really?
I wouldn't know. So they quoted a research that was done in Iran of newlywed couples. One of them had anxiety and depression, and the other was healthy, right? So they had a control group and a experimental group.
Yeah.
And the conclusion they came to was that because the couple kisses each other, the other person, the healthy spouse, ends up getting anxiety and depression as well.
Oh, wow.
Right? Now it's research backed. There's research.
Yeah.
There's published research that supports it. But if you don't understand research and statistics, you're like, okay, I'm not kissing anybody ever again. This is like, wow, damn it. Like I was before. But there is a simple confounding variable, right?
Yeah.
That if you are spending your time with somebody who has anxiety and depression, you might find it difficult. You might get into more fights. There might be more miscommunication. There might be more misunderstandings. And that will lead to a lower mental health in the healthy spouse as well.
Yeah.
So again, it was said with a lot of confidence, great graphics, and it's done 100K views, something like that, right? There's one reel which is about why don't psychiatrists cure their patients? So a bunch of psychiatrists are being asked, how many patients have you cured?
Oh, okay.
And they can't say that they've cured anybody because cured is a technical term, right? That the illness will not come back. That's what cured means.
Yeah.
And we don't understand mental health or mental disorders well enough that we can say that anybody has been cured. Even with cancer, we don't say that
No.
it's cured, right? We say it's in remission.
Exactly.
But again, the common people see that and they're like, these psychiatrists don't treat anybody. They're just there for our money. That's the intention with which it was posted.
Yeah.
So these things, I mean, I was sent that to send. A lot of people sent that to me and said, look, psychiatrists are doing this. You're a psychologist. You should call them out. And I said, no, think about what you're sending me as well, right? So there's a lot of that content on mental health which reduces people's chances of seeking help from actual professionals. Yeah. And the replacement for that are people who are not trained in any of this. And it's a very dangerous precedent for these people.
Yeah, I mean, I look and I see so much stuff, and even sometimes I've seen some stuff by professionals, and I've sort of concerns me of where people are talking about patients, and literally you could identify who that patient may well be.
Students, there are some students who are very motivated of their internship. And they just take a picture of the outpatient room and they're like, hey, look, I'm in an outpatient room in a mental hospital. And it's just people's faces are right there.
Yeah.
There's no anonymity that there. It's absolutely...
What would you... I mean, you've got a big following.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and what sort of message would you have to those aspiring mental health professionals? Because they're our future. I'm the past. I'm 52, so I don't have much longer. But we've got these young people coming up through. What sort of message would you like to be sort of passing over to our younger generation that are considering going into or are already sort of in the process of studying?
Ethics are all we have. I think personally, what sets psychology apart from different fields or mental health care from different fields are ethics of individual autonomy, of not bringing harm to other people, and being kind to other people. Those ethics are all that we have. And no matter what happens, no matter what is at stake, we cannot really compromise on these ethics. So I think it's easier said than done. But ethics above all else. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you say that. I've seen some very, very strange stuff over my years.
Tell us a good story.
Well, I mean, things like therapists going out for dinner with clients. Therapists asking clients to give them lifts to various places, going on holiday
with their clients.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of strange stuff that sort of goes on. So, and I'm not just talking about in India as well. I mean, I think you talked a little bit about legislation, and we talked about that. And I think it is important to realise that even with the best will in the world of having, legislation and licensing and things like that, we're still going to get. This stuff's going to happen. Absolutely. It's just going to reduce it a little bit.
Absolutely. I think if people know that they'll be held accountable, I think there's that sword behind us that, look, we can't just take risks.
Yeah.
There will be some people who will still do it.
Yeah.
But I personally believe that it will be a lot fewer than what we have right now.
Yeah. There's a lot to be done.
It's always a work in progress. Like even with the next generation, they'll also leave it to the next generation after that. So
I wanted to ask you a few sort of what I would call a few quick questions. We sort of prepared a couple. Now I think they've thrown you in the deep end, and you're going to ask me some questions as well. So I'll, now would you like me to go first?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
Let's do one by one.
One by one. Okay, so I get the first question, you get this,
Yep.
and then you. Okay, all right. So what's one small ritual or habit that you have that instantly lifts your mood, no matter what?
I work out. I work out wherever I can, whenever I can, or I go for a walk. Easiest thing to lift your mood.
So-
It's the best.
Being active and
Being active.
Being active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sitting here for an hour has been very difficult. I'll be honest.
I'm a natural fidget myself, so yeah.
We should do a walking podcast next time. Okay, my turn. What's your favorite movie?
There are so many, but there's a particular movie that I have watched multiple times, and it always brings a tear to my eye, which is The Green Mile.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about that movie that just resonates, and just the way the movie ends as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's such a clever, emotive movie that has so many different parts to it, the sort of the joys of life and the pain of life, and good people, bad people, and how, sometimes how good people end up becoming bad people or punished for their goodness. I think it's a brilliant movie.
Nice. Good one.
Yeah. Well, okay. If you weren't creating content around psychology, what completely unexpected career would you be in?
I would be unemployed. Unemployed? I think I'd be into teaching. I'm pretty sure I'd be into teaching because that's pretty much what I do right now as well. But I think I'd be doing it in a school or a college somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of your content also is educational and supportive.
It's around statistics, research, data.
Yeah.
I enjoy that kind of stuff. I'm a very nerdy person that way. Like, just give me numbers and I will love them.
Can you just give me one really cool stat that you've that's related to mental health that probably I won't know and that no one else would?
See, now that's putting me on the spot. In 1958, there was just one depressed person in the whole of India.
Wow.
That is because there was this anthropologist who came to India to see to measure the levels of depression in India. And I think he did a survey in Kerala. And in his first survey, he found nobody who met the criteria for depression. And the next time he did it, he found one person throughout his survey, one person who met the criteria for depression. And he concluded that depression is not a real thing, right? But then we moved away from DSM-2. In 1958, it was DSM-2, which was very psychoanalytical.
Yes.
DSM-2 or 1, I think. It was very psychoanalytical in its approach. Depression was defined as the overtaking of emotion after you lose a loved object, right?
Yeah.
And you tell people, do you feel something like that? They're like, what are you talking about? This is not right. When a survey was done with better tools, we found that depression rates are pretty normal in India. Just as you would expect in any normal country, there is depression. It's not just 1 in a million over here. So I just use that as an example to show how the tools we use to measure things matter a lot. If you don't have the right tools, you're going to come to the wrong conclusions, and it will mislead you and everybody else around you.
And I think that's also around about how how you interpret the data, because you can interpret in many ways. Like the kissing one, like the
you bring in your own biases when you're interpreting data, don't you?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
That definitely happens.
Yeah.
Okay, my turn. What brought you to India?
Now, I get asked this question a lot, so I'm hoping I'm keeping my answer consistent. What brought me to India? I got an opportunity. I think I've been really lucky with my career. Worked in Asia for a long period of time. During COVID, I got a message about would I be interested in coming to India, and I was thinking, well, it's probably nothing to this. It's just probably a load of nonsense. Not going to happen. It'll be a discussion. But I thought I would have a conversation. And the funny bit is that, so I had my interview. They sort of said, "Oh, would you like to have an interview? We'd like to interview you." And I was stuck in quarantine. It was during COVID, and I was in a 14-day quarantine in Bangkok at the time. I was just travelling back from the UK back to my home in Chiang Mai, and so I had the interview, and the benefactor of Samarpan, Shrenit Baldota, was obviously very passionate about what he wanted to do here. I'd also always had a bit of an interest in India. It was the first country that I'd visited on my own. So when I got to 18 and I travelled on my own, the first overseas country that I came to on my own was India. So I always had a fascination with India because my grandfather was here back in the early 40s and always spoke very, very fondly of India. So it was a place that I had sort of an attachment to, and the opportunity to come to somewhere, maybe do something different, experience another culture.
Yeah.
That was really enticing, and I'm glad I've done it. I'm pleased to be here. I think it's a wonderful country. I say it's got an assault on the senses. It has everything, the sound, the smells, the visuals.
Yeah.
It's just this fascinating country. So yeah,
it's sensational.
I've got my last question.
Yeah.
I think if you could swap lives with one person for a day, who would you want to be?
I'm a football fan. Okay. I'm a football fan, and I'd love to swap places with anybody who's inside the Emirates Stadium in Arsenal. But something that's more palatable to the rest of the audience. Anant Ambani lives sound great, right? Anant Ambani, richest man and son to the richest man in India. That'd be great. You have your own zoo.
Here's a quick question though.
Yeah.
If you had all of his money and influence, what would you use it for in the field of mental health?
Oh, I would bring in so many regulations. I would just stop everything. Let's just stop everything and figure things out, okay? Until we figure things out, let's just stop everything and see what is going on. Okay, my last question. I hope you enjoyed our conversation.
Very much so. Very much so.
Same here.
That's the question.
That's the question. I can't think of anything.
Okay. It was a really, it's been an absolute pleasure, Arjun. And I'm so grateful for you travelling down today and coming down and meeting the staff and seeing our outpatient clinic. So
yeah, it's been great. You have a great setup here. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to be back here soon as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.